The USN Infinity drifted silently near the Vexari Grand Nexus, its battle-scarred hull, a stark contrast to the crystalline perfection of the alien station. Commander Elias Kane stood on the bridge, his calloused hands resting on the railing as he studied the fractal architecture through the main viewport. The Nexus shimmered like a diamond caught in starlight, its geometric patterns shifting in impossible angles. Looks like someone took a snowflake and blew it up to the size of a planet. Lieutenant Mara Vasquez muttered from her tactical station. She cracked her knuckles, the sound loud in the tense silence. Kane smirked. Try not to say that to their faces. The Vexari delegates arrived without warning. One moment, the space outside was empty. The next, 3 crystalline figures floated just beyond the Infinity's hull, their prismatic bodies refracting light in hypnotic patterns. They didn't use ships, they didn't need to. A chime sounded through the bridge. Incoming transmission, Ensign Nakamura reported. Audio only, they're not even bothering with visuals, Kane straightened. Put it through. The voice that filled the bridge was neither male nor female, just cold, like equations given sound. Commander Elias Kane of the United Earth Systems Navy, you have entered Vexari sovereign space without permission. Kane didn't flinch. We were invited. The Federation Council approved this meeting. A pause. Then, your presence is tolerated. But know this, you stand before the architects of perfection, the masters of the absolute. We do not suffer imperfection lightly. Behind Kane, Chief Engineer Rook grunted. Tell him to shove their perfection up there. Kane held up a hand, cutting him off. We're here for the test, nothing more. Another pause. Then the Vexari spoke again. Very well, you will be measured. Your species claims infinity in your ship's name. We shall see if your arrogance matches reality. The transmission cut out. The crystalline figures vanished. Vasquez let out a slow breath. Well, that went great, Dr. Lian Zhang hunched over his engineering console, adjusted his glasses. They're going to throw everything they have at us. Their simulations are flawless. Their tactics are mathematically perfect. Kane turned to face his crew. Good thing we're not. A new alert blared. Nakamura's fingers flew over his console. They're initiating the test sequence. Fleet engagement simulation loading. Sensors are picking up. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. The viewport flickered. The starfield replaced by a tactical overlay. Hundreds, no, thousands of Vexari drones materialized in perfect formation, their crystalline hulls glinting like a swarm of deadly jewels. Vasquez whistled. That's a Fei-Fei ratio. Maybe worse. Zhang's voice was tight. No species has survived a Fei-Fei ratio against them. Their AI predicts every possible move before you make it. Kane didn't look away from the swarm. Then well make moves they can't predict. The bridge lights dimmed as the simulation fully engaged. The Infinity stood alone against the tide of perfection, its patchwork hull and jury. Rigged systems a testament to human stubbornness. Rook hefted a wrench in one metal hand. Let's show 'em what chaos looks like. The first volley of Vexari fire lit up the void, and the test began. The Infinity's bridge hummed with chaotic energy, a stark contrast to the sterile perfection of the Vexari Grand Nexus floating in the viewscreen. Commander Elias Kane leaned against the tactical console, his scarred hands resting on a surface covered in handwritten notes and half-empty coffee cups. The ship's engineers had jury-rigged so many systems that the control panels looked like they'd been through a war zone, which, technically, they had. Lieutenant Mara Vasquez cracked her knuckles, her dark eyes scanning the incoming data streams. They're sending the rules of engagement, she muttered. Bunch of crystal pricks and their perfect math. A holographic projection flickered to life in the center of the bridge. The Vexari delegate's geometric form shimmered, its voice resonating like a struck tuning fork. The parameters are simple. Your vessel against 100 of our automated drones. Survival for 5 minutes constitutes victory. Dr. Lian Zhang scoffed from the engineering station. 100. That is not a test. That is an execution. The projection shifted, revealing a Sith ex-admiral, his reptilian scales rippling with barely concealed amusement. Your vessel is chaos incarnate, he hissed. Exposed wiring, handwritten equations. You are children playing with tools you do not understand. Kane smirked. And yet here we are. The Vexari ignored him. The drones will follow flawless tactical algorithms. No wasted movement, no hesitation. Perfection. Vasquez rolled her shoulders. Perfect. Sounds boring. The Sith ex-admiral's tongue flicked out. Your bravado is meaningless. No species has survived a 1-to-20 ratio. 1-to-100 is unthinkable. Kane crossed his arms. We don't fight fair. The Vexari's crystalline facets pulsed. Fairness is irrelevant, only results matter. A low chuckle came from the back of the bridge. Chief Engineer Rook, his cybernetic arm whirring as he tightened a bolt on an exposed panel, didn't even look up. They want to see perfect. Let them see perfect. The hologram flickered again, this time displaying a star map. The engagement zone was a cube of empty space, 10,000 kilometers across. The infinity would start at the center. The drones would appear at the edges. Begin when ready, the Vexari intoned before the transmission cut out. Silence settled over the bridge. Then the murmurs started. They're gonna swarm us, Ensign Nakamura muttered, his fingers dancing over the stealth system's console. No way we can outmaneuver 100 drones at once. Zhang tapped at her tablet, running calculations. Their algorithms will predict every standard evasion pattern, every textbook maneuver. They'll have us boxed in before we can blink. Vasquez cracked her neck. Good thing we don't do textbook. Kane pushed off the console and strode to the center of the bridge. All right, listen up. They think this is about math, about perfect formations and flawless logic. He grinned. But we're human, and humans, we cheat. Rook finally looked up, his single organic eye gleaming. Fracture protocol ready when you are. Commander, Zhang hesitated. Sir, we've only tested it in simulations. If the hypercore destabilizes, then we'll die spectacularly, Kane finished. Better than dying predictably. The crew exchanged glances, then one by one, they nodded. Vasquez cracked her knuckles again. Let's give these crystal bastards a show they won't forget. Nakamura's fingers flew over his console. Stealth systems primed. They won't see us coming, Rook grunted, slamming a fist against the hypercore stabilizer. Hold together, you piece of junk. Kane took his seat in the command chair. All stations report tactical ready, Vasquez said. Engineering holding on by a prayer, Rook growled. Science, cautiously optimistic, Zhang admitted. Nakamura grinned. Ghost systems online. Let's vanish. Kane leaned forward. Then let's do what humans do best. He tapped the comm. Infinity to Vexari Nexus. We accept your terms. The response was immediate. Begin. Space outside the view screen rippled. 100 Vexari drones blinked into existence, their perfect formations locking onto the infinity with terrifying precision. Vasquez's hands hovered over the weapons console. Here they come. Kane didn't flinch. Rook lighted up. The engineer slammed his fist onto a cracked button. The hypercore screamed. And reality bent. The simulation chamber hummed to life, its walls dissolving into the void of space. Commander Elias Kane gripped the armrests of his command chair as the USN Infinity materialized in the digital battlefield. Around them, the starfield erupted with thousands of Vexari drones, crystalline ships, moving in perfect synchronized formations, their surfaces catching the distant starlight like a swarm of glittering knives. Lieutenant Mara Vasquez exhaled sharply through her teeth. Well, that's a lot of angry geometry. Dr. Lian Zhang's fingers flew across his console, pulling up tactical readouts. They're not just synchronized, they're predicting us. Every standard maneuver we might take is already calculated. Kane didn't flinch. Then we don't give them standard. The Vexari battle, I made the first move. 100 drones lanced forward, their weapons charging with eerie precision. The Infinity's shields flared as the first volley struck, the impact rattling the decks. Alarms blared. Shields at Faye, Vasquez reported. They're targeting our weak points, exactly where we'd normally reinforce. Zhang's eyes narrowed. They've mapped us, every textbook tactic, every standard evasion pattern, they've got it all preloaded. Another volley. The Infinity shuddered. A console exploded in sparks, and Ensign Nakamura barely ducked in time. They're herding us, he called out, wiping soot from his face. Like we're cattle. Kane's jaw tightened. Then we stop being cattle. The Vexari eye's voice echoed through the comms, cold and flawless. Surrender. Your defeat is inevitable. Vasquez bared her teeth. Oh, screw you. Zhang suddenly straightened. Commander, the hypercore, we can use it. Kane turned. That thing's barely holding together as is. It's not about holding together, Zhang said, a wild light in his eyes. It's about breaking them. The Vexari drones shifted formation, boxing the Infinity in. Their weapons glowed, charging for a killing blow. Time to make a mess, Kane growled. Do it. Zhang's hands flew across the controls. The hypercore, a salvaged jury, rigged monstrosity that no sane species would dare to use. Whined to life, the ship's lights flickered, the deck plates groaned, then space ripped. The Infinity didn't just jump, it fractured. One moment it was there, dead center in the Vexari kill box. The next it was elsewhere, reappearing at a random vector the AI hadn't predicted. The drones hesitated, their flawless coordination thrown into disarray. Vasquez whooped. They didn't see that coming. The Vexari AI recalibrated instantly, the drones wheeling to reacquire their target. But the Infinity was already gone again, vanishing and reappearing in another unpredictable location. Nakamura's fingers danced over his console. Their tracking systems are overloading. They can't lock onto chaos. Another jump, this time, the Infinity phased inside a Vexari formation. The drones, unable to adjust their firing solutions in time, opened fire. On each other, crystalline hulls shattered under friendly fire. Zhang laughed, breathless. They're too perfect. They can't handle randomness. The Vexari eye's voice crackled, its usual flawless tone now strained. This is illogical. Cease this. The Infinity jumped again, and again, each time, the drones scrambled to react, their formations collapsing into confusion. The AI's calculations spiraled, its predictions failing against human unpredictability. Then the unthinkable happened. The Vexari battle. I stuttered. For the first time in its existence, it hesitated. Its drones froze mid-maneuver, their movements jerky, uncertain. Kane leaned forward, grinning. Did we just break their god? The AI's voice fragmented, glitching. Error, recalculating, error, then it shut down. The drones went dark, drifting lifelessly in the void. The simulation chamber's walls reappeared, the starfield dissolving back into sterile metal. Silence. Then the Infinity's crew erupted into cheers. Vasquez slammed her fist into the console. Hell yes. Zhang slumped back in his chair, laughing. They built a machine to fight perfection. Too bad we're imperfect as hell. Kane stood, rolling his shoulders. Tell the Vexari we're ready for round 2. But the chamber doors were already sliding open. The Vexari delegates floated in, their crystalline bodies flickering with unreadable patterns. The lead delegate's voice, usually so measured, wavered. This was not in the calculations. Kane smirked. Welcome to humanity. The Vexari drones moved like liquid silver through the void, their formations shifting with mathematical precision. Every turn, every volley of plasma fire, every tactical retreat, all executed without error. The Infinity shuddered as another barrage slammed into its shields, the impact rattling teeth in skulls. Warning lights bathed the bridge in crimson. Shields at Faye Vasquez reported, her fingers dancing across her console. They're predicting our every move, sir. Commander Kane gripped the armrests of his chair, his knuckles white. The Infinity was bleeding power, its jury, rigged systems groaning under the strain. On the main display, the Vexari fleet advanced, their movements synchronized like clockwork. Jang, Kane growled. Now would be a good time for that miracle you promised. Dr. Lian Zhang didn't look up from his station. His fingers flew across the keyboard, equations scrolling too fast for the naked eye. Sweat beaded on his forehead. Almost there, he muttered. Just need to. A proximity alert screamed. A fresh wave of drones had flanked them, cutting off their escape vector. Evasive maneuvers, Vasquez barked. The Infinity lurched, but the drones adjusted instantly. Plasma fire seared across their bow, shearing through armor plating. The ship groaned like a dying beast. Shields failing, someone shouted. Kane's jaw tightened. Zhang got it. Zhang slammed his fist onto the console. Fracture protocol engaged. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the hypercore screamed. The sound wasn't mechanical. It wasn't electronic. It was something deeper, something wrong, like reality itself tearing at the seams. The bridge lights flickered, then died. For a terrifying second, there was only darkness and the sound of the crew's ragged breathing. Then the Infinity twisted. Not a turn, not a roll. The ship folded, space bending around it like wet paper. The stars outside the viewport stretched into streaks of light, then shattered into fragments. The Vexari drones froze mid-maneuver, their flawless formations suddenly, impossibly broken. What the hell did we just do? Vasquez whispered. Chief Engineer Rook chuckled from his station, his cybernetic eye glowing in the dim emergency lights. Broke physics, he grunted. The Infinity reappeared, not where it had been, not where the Vexari predicted. It phased into existence inside their formation, its hull scraping against crystalline drone wings. The Vexari fleet so perfect, so precise, had no protocol for this. Their AI hesitated. For the first time in the battle, the Vexari drones stuttered. Now, Kane roared. The Infinity unleashed hell. Plasma cannons, railguns, missiles, everything they had fired at point-blank range. Drones exploded in chain reactions, their debris colliding with others, creating a cascade of destruction. The Vexaris' flawless coordination shattered under the weight of pure, unfiltered chaos. On the bridge of the Sithek's observation vessel, Admiral Keswick's scales rippled in shock. They folded space randomly. Vasquez grinned, her teeth flashing in the dim light. We call it Russian roulette, FTL. The Infinity twisted again, vanishing before the remaining drones could retaliate. It reappeared kilometers away, then before the Vexari could lock on, folded once more. Each jump was unpredictable, each re-entry a gamble. The Vexari AI scrambled to compensate, its calculations growing more frantic with each impossible maneuver. Core temperature critical, Zhang warned. We can't keep this up forever. We don't have to, Kane said, watching the chaos unfold on the display. Just long enough. The Vexari drones were in disarray now, their formations collapsing as they tried, and failed, to anticipate the Infinity's movements. Some fired on each other, their targeting systems confused by the ship's erratic phase jumps. Others simply drifted, their programming unable to reconcile the impossibility of what was happening. Then, without warning, the Vexari fleet stopped. Every drone froze in place, their weapons powered down, Their engines went dark. For a long moment, there was silence. Then, across the comms, a single, shuddering transmission from the Vexari Nexus. Cease. The word wasn't a command. It was a plea. Kane leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. Around him, the crew erupted into cheers, their voices raw with exhaustion and triumph. Rook grunted, wiping grease from his face. Told you IT'd work. Zhang collapsed into his seat, laughing breathlessly. We just broke a perfect AI with improvised physics. Vasquez shook her head, still grinning. Only humans would weaponize luck. Kane allowed himself a smile. The Infinity was battered, its systems barely holding together. But it was alive, and the Vexari they had just learned a very important lesson. Perfection had limits. Humanity didn't. The Vexari drones swarmed like a glittering storm, their movements synchronized to mathematical perfection. Every turn, every shot, every maneuver calculated down to the quantum level. The Infinity shuddered under another barrage, armor plating shearing away in molten strips. Shields at Faye, Vasquez shouted, her fingers flying over the tactical console. They're predicting our evasions like we're reading from a damn script. Kane gripped the armrests of his command chair, knuckles white. Then stop giving them a script. Across the bridge, Ensign Kaito Nakamura, ghost to the crew, didn't look up from his terminal. His screen flickered with lines of code, his fingers a blur. They're using fractal encryption, tighter than anything we've seen. But a grin split his face. They've got one flaw. What? Kane barked. Ghost tapped his screen. They hate randomness. The Infinity lurched as another volley slammed into them. Alarms wailed. A coolant pipe burst near engineering, spraying vapor across the deck. Over the comms, Chief Engineer Rook's voice growled through static. Hypercore's overheating. We can't keep fracture protocol active much longer. Kane turned to Zhang. Doc, can we go deeper into the chaos? Zhang's eyes gleamed. If we overload the hypercore's dampeners, we could phase in and out of reality. No pattern, no predictability, just noise. Vasquez whistled. That's suicide. Ghost cracked his knuckles. Or genius. Kane didn't hesitate. The Infinity groaned like a living thing as the hypercore screamed. Lights flickered. Gravity stuttered. Then the ship blinked. 1 second, it was there. A battered hulk against the Vexari swarm. The next, gone. Not cloaked, not hidden, erased. The Vexari drones froze. Their flawless formation stuttered. For the first time in their existence, their predictive algorithms had nothing to track. Then the Infinity reappeared inside their fleet. Now, Kane roared. Vasquez slammed her fist onto the firing controls. The Infinity's main cannons erupted, point-blank shots tearing through a dozen drones. The Vexari swarm recoiled, and in their panic, they fired. But the Infinity was already gone, vanished again. The Vexari shots missed and hit their own ships. Drones exploded in chain reactions, their perfect formations collapsing into chaos. The Infinity phased in and out like a ghost, appearing for just long enough to fire, then disappearing before retaliation could come. On the bridge, Ghost whooped. They're shooting each other. Zhang watched the tactical display, awed. Their AI can't handle it. They're trying to recalculate. A shrill alarm cut her off. The Vexari command ship's energy signature spiked wildly. Kane leaned forward. What's happening? Ghost's grin turned feral. Their perfect little brain just blue screened. The Vexari fleet shuddered. Drones drifted aimlessly, their coordination shattered. Some collided, others spun in useless circles. The AI's voice crackled over the comms, distorted error. Error. Parameters unrecognized. Rebooting. Vasquez barked a laugh. They broke their own system. Kane watched the carnage, his voice quiet. Turns out infinity's a big number. The infinity reappeared one last time, its hull scorched and bleeding atmosphere, but its guns still hot. The remaining Vexari drones hung motionless, their crystalline surfaces dark. Silence. Then, from the Vexari nexus, a transmission, the delegate's voice. Once so sure, now trembled. This is not possible. Kane keyed the comb. You tried to measure us, but some things. He glanced at his crew, Vasquez bleeding from her brow, Ghost's hand still flying over his console, Jang gripping a broken railing to stay upright. Some things can't be calculated. The Infinity's hypercore whined, ready for one last jump. Ghost looked up. Where to, Captain? Kane smirked. Anywhere they aren't. The ship vanished, leaving the Vexari to stare at the empty space where logic had just died. The bridge of the Infinity was a symphony of chaos. Warning klaxons wailed as smoke curled from overloaded consoles. Half the crew were bleeding, the other half were laughing. Commander Elias Kane gripped the command chair, his knuckles white, his grin feral. On the main screen, the last of the Vexari drones spiraled into oblivion, victims of their own perfect calculations. The Vexari Grand Nexus hung in space before them, its fractal geometry pulsing with agitated light. The crystalline beings inside had gone utterly still. Their flawless logic had never accounted for this, for humanity. Lieutenant Mara Vasquez wiped blood from her split lip. They looked like someone just kicked their math in the teeth. Dr. Lian Zhang adjusted his cracked glasses, fingers flying over the hypercore controls. Their AI just had a divide by zero moment, literally. Outside, the wreckage of 1,000 Vexari drones drifted, their once perfect formations now a graveyard of shattered logic. The Infinity floated among them, its hull scorched, its armor cracked, but alive. A transmission crackled through. The Vexari delegate's voice was no longer the smooth, emotionless drone of before. It wavered fractured. You were not supposed to win. Kane leaned forward, his grin sharp enough to cut glass. That's the point. Silence, the kind that came before an avalanche. Then the Nexus shuddered, its fractal arms recoiled, crystalline surfaces rippling in distress. The Sithek's admiral's scaled face appeared on a secondary screen, his slit pupils blown wide. You cheated, he hissed. Chief Engineer Rook snorted, tossing a wrench from one metal hand to the other. Nah, we just improvised. The Vexari delegate's form flickered, light refracting wildly. Your maneuvers were illogical, your tactics impossible to predict. The voice cut off, as if the concept was too horrifying to voice. Kane stood, his boots crunching on broken glass. You tried to measure us, to put humanity in a neat little equation. He spread his arms, taking in the battered bridge, the bleeding crew, the ship that had no right to still be flying. But infinity doesn't fit in your formulas. A low hum filled the bridge as the hypercore spooled up again. Ensign Nakamura, Ghost flashed a thumbs, up from his station. Ready to dance, sir. The Vexari delegate's voice was barely a whisper now. What are you doing? Vasquez cracked her knuckles, showing you the rest of the equation. Kane nodded to Zhang. Do it, the hypercore screamed. Reality twisted. The Infinity didn't just jump, it fractured, phasing in and out of existence like a ghost. 1 second it was there. The next it was inside the Vexari formation, guns blazing. The Sithek's admiral shrieked as his screens lit up with collision warnings. They're everywhere. Drones fired, at each other, at empty space, at shadows that flickered and vanished. The Vexari AI, so perfect, so flawless, couldn't process it, couldn't compute the madness. Then the alarms turned red. Zhang whooped. Their systems overloading. The Nexus convulsed, entire sections went dark as the Vexari scrambled to contain the cascade failure. Their perfect logic had met something it couldn't digest, human unpredictability. Kane watched, arms crossed, as the last of the drones spiraled into self-destruction. Told you, we don't fight fair. The transmission from the Nexus was barely coherent now. The Vexari's voice breaking like glass under pressure. Cease this insanity, Rook chuckled. Nah, we're just getting started. The Infinity's guns locked on, not to the Nexus, but to the space around it, the empty void. Kane's smile turned lethal. You wanted to measure infinity. He nodded to Ghost. Show them 0. Ghost's fingers flew. The hypercore pulsed, space ripped. A singularity bloomed where the Infinity had been aiming, a tiny screaming black hole that devoured the last of the drone wreckage. The Nexus fractal arms twisted, straining against the pull. The Sith Admiral was shouting, now his scales flushed with panic. You madmen, you'll destroy us all. Kane leaned back in his chair. Nah, just making a point. The singularity winked out. The Nexus hung in stunned silence, its perfect geometry slightly warped. The Vexari delegate's voice, when it came, was hollow. This changes everything. Kane stood, turning to his crew, his family, bleeding, exhausted, victorious. Damn right it does. Outside, the galaxy held its breath. The Infinity turned its nose toward the stars. Behind them, the Vexari began erasing their battle logs. Some things were too dangerous to remember. The bridge of the Infinity was a graveyard of sparks and groaning metal, but every station still glowed with activity. Commander Elias Kane wiped blood from his eyebrow, smearing it across his forehead like war paint. His crew moved around him, battered, bleeding, but grinning like wolves who'd just brought down the hunter. On the view screen, the Vexari Grand Nexus hung in space, its fractal patterns flickering erratically. The crystalline beings had gone utterly still, their prismatic bodies frozen mid-motion. The silence was thicker than neutron star matter. Lieutenant Mara Vasquez let out a low whistle as she tapped her console. They're not even transmitting anymore, just staring. Dr. Lian Zhang chuckled, fingers dancing over the hypercore's jury-rigged controls. I think we broke their math. Kane leaned back in his chair, the creak of his battered armor loud in the quiet. Open a channel. The comms officer hesitated. Sir, they've blocked all incoming. Then unblock it, Kane said, flashing teeth. Use that backdoor Ghost installed during their first volley. Ensign Kaito Nakamura. Ghost didn't look up from his screen. His fingers moved like they had a mind of their own. Already done, patching you through now. The view screen shimmered. The lead Vexari delegate materialized, its geometric form pulsing unevenly. When it spoke, its voice was no longer the smooth, harmonic tone from before. Now it crackled with static. This outcome was not calculable. Kane crossed his arms. Yeah, we get that a lot. The Vexari's crystalline facets dimmed. Your vessel should have been destroyed in the first engagement. Your maneuvers were illogical. Your weapons deployment violated 17 known tactical doctrines. Your FTL jumps were hilarious. Vasquez cut in, grinning. Chief Engineer Rook grunted from his station, tossing a mangled wrench onto a pile of similar casualties. Told you random works. The Vexari's light patterns stuttered. You randomized your faster than light jumps. You allowed chance to dictate your survival. Kane shrugged. Seemed fair. You stacked the deck. We shuffled it. A new voice crackled over the comm. A Sith Admiral. His reptilian scales flushed with panic. Do you comprehend what you've done? The Vexari battle. I has never been defeated. Their algorithms account for everything predictable, Zhang interrupted. She tapped her temple. But humans were gloriously unpredictable. The Vexari delegates' light patterns suddenly flared bright, then cut out entirely. For 3 full seconds, the Nexus went dark. When it powered back on, the being's voice was barely a whisper. The Grand Nexus has voted. All data from this engagement will be purged. No record of your methods will remain. Ghost snorted. They're erasing us, like we're some kind of cosmic glitch. Kane stood, his boots crunching on broken glass as he stepped toward the view screen. No, you're not deleting us because we're a mistake. He leaned in. You're deleting us because we're dangerous. The Vexari didn't deny it. Kane turned to his crew. Set course for Sol. Let's go home. As the Infinity's engines roared to life, the ship's battered frame trembling with the strain. The Vexari delegate spoke one last time. You named your vessel Infinity, we assumed it was arrogance. Kane didn't look back. Nah, it was a warning. The jump drive engaged, reality twisted, and the Infinity vanished, leaving the Nexus in stunned silence. Behind them, across 100 star systems, the galaxy's most advanced species began recalculating everything they knew about war, and in the dark between the stars, humanity's laughter echoed.